Clara Evans once believed in forever. She had met Ethan Miller when she was 25, the kind of love that felt written in the stars. He was charming, ambitious, and always said the right things. They built dreams together, the little apartment they called their castle, the plans for a business, and the promise of a future that would never crumble. But sometimes love doesn't end with a loud crash. It fades, quietly, cruelly. It started with distance. Ethan became secretive, often glued to his phone, and his words lost their warmth. Clara thought it was work stress, so she became even more supportive, cooking his favorite meals, leaving love notes on his desk, waiting for the man she once knew to come back. One night, when he came home late, smelling of perfume that wasn't hers, Clara's world tilted. She asked softly, "Who is she?" He didn't deny it. He just looked at her with eyes that had once adored her and said, "You've changed, Clara. You're not the same woman I fell in love with." Those words burned deeper than any betrayal. Within a week, he was gone, taking not only his clothes but also their shared savings, leaving Clara with unpaid bills and an empty apartment that echoed with heartbreak. She sat on the floor, holding a photo of them at the beach, and whispered, "How did we get here?" For weeks, she barely ate. The world outside continued to move, people laughing, buses running, rain falling, but inside her heart, everything had stopped. Her best friend, Mia, tried to pull her out of the darkness. "You can't let him win," Mia said one night over tea. "You're too good to break like this." Clara smiled faintly. "He didn't just leave, Mia. He erased me." But even broken hearts beat again. One morning, she stood before the mirror and saw herself, pale, tired, but still there, still alive. She whispered, "You can't destroy me, Ethan. Not forever." She went for a walk for the first time in months, watching sunlight filter through city buildings. At a cafe corner, she saw a poster. "Design Your Future. Interior Design Course begins next week." Clara had always loved decorating spaces, rearranging, imagining beauty from chaos. It was her secret joy. She stared at that poster for a long time, and something inside her sparked. Maybe this was where healing would begin, not in revenge, but in rediscovering herself. She enrolled. The first day of class felt like stepping into a new world, full of color, texture, and inspiration. She met others who shared her passion, and for the first time in months, she smiled without forcing it. There was also someone new, Daniel Reed, the soft-spoken instructor with kind eyes and a quiet way of noticing details. He never asked about her past. He just treated her like she mattered. And that, after so much hurt, felt like sunlight on a frozen heart. Clara didn't fall for him immediately, but she began to believe in the possibility of peace again. She started sketching, creating, dreaming. Her designs were raw, but full of emotion, beauty born from pain. Daniel once looked at one of her drawings and said, "You have a gift, Clara. Pain didn't break you, it gave you depth." That night, she cried. But they were healing tears. Clara Evans was slowly coming back to life. Would you like me to continue now with part 2? The comeback begins. Next 1,000 words. It will show how Clara starts building her new career, faces Ethan again unexpectedly, and begins to find real love with Daniel. 6 months later, Clara Evans no longer looked like the woman who once cried over Ethan Miller's betrayal. Her hair was shorter now, a soft chestnut bob that framed her face perfectly. Her eyes still carried a trace of sadness, but there was something new too: determination. The interior design course had become her sanctuary. Colors replaced tears, sketches replaced heartbreak. Every project was like a quiet confession of what she had endured and survived. Daniel Reed, her instructor, noticed her transformation more than anyone else. "You've grown, Clara," he told her one evening when most students had left. They were working late in the studio, surrounded by samples of fabrics, paints, and dreams. "Your designs feel fearless." She smiled gently. "Maybe because I finally stopped designing for someone else's approval." He looked at her, impressed. "That's where real art begins." She didn't realize how much those words meant to her until later that night. For years, she had lived through someone else's validation, Ethan's moods, Ethan's opinions, Ethan's love. But now she was learning to live through her own. Hebe, the end of the year, Clara graduated at the top of her class. Her final project, a design titled Rebirth, caught the attention of a small architecture firm that specialized in boutique interiors. They offered her an internship, and for the first time in a long time, Clara felt something like pride. Her first assignment was to help design a modern cafe downtown. Ironically, it was near Ethan's old office, a reminder of a world she had escaped. Still, she walked into the site meeting confidently, carrying her sketchbook and a calm she never knew she could have. She was reviewing layout plans when she heard a voice she thought she'd never hear again. "Clara?" It was Ethan. He looked almost the same, maybe a little thinner, a little older, but still the man who had once broken her. Shock flickered in his eyes. "I heard you were doing something in design now."
Wow.
"You look different." She smiled politely. "People change." The meeting continued, but Ethan kept glancing at her as if trying to figure out how she'd rebuilt what he'd tried to destroy. When it ended, he approached her. "Clara, wait."
Can we talk?
"Just for a minute." She hesitated, then nodded. "Outside, on the quiet street," he said softly, "I made mistakes. Big ones. I shouldn't have left the way I did. I thought I wanted more." But he trailed off, searching for the right words. "I see you now. You've become everything I used to dream you'd be." Clara's heart didn't race the way it used to. She looked at him, calm and composed. "You're right," she said. "I became everything you dreamed of, but without you." For the first time, she saw regret in his eyes. Not the shallow kind, but the kind that comes too late. "I was stupid, Clara," he said quietly. "We could start over." "No," she interrupted gently. "We couldn't. You can't restart something that died the way we did." She walked away before tears could rise, not out of pain, but relief. For the first time, she realized the past no longer controlled her. A few days later, while working late, Daniel came by with 2 cups of coffee. "Long day?" he asked, placing one near her sketchbook. "Long life," she smiled. He chuckled. "Well, I hope I'm part of the better chapters." She looked at him for a long moment, his soft brown eyes, the way he listened without judgment. "You already are." From that night, something unspoken began to grow between them. Not a whirlwind romance like before, but something steady, like sunrise after a storm. Daniel never rushed her. He made her laugh again, encouraged her to dream bigger, and one evening, when he brushed a strand of hair from her face, it didn't feel like a new beginning. It felt like coming home. Months passed. Clara's design started getting noticed online. Her minimalist yet emotional style drew attention. She was soon offered a chance to co-design a small art gallery, her biggest project yet. On the day of the opening, she wore a simple white dress, elegant, confident. Daniel was by her side, smiling with quiet pride. Reporters asked her how she found her inspiration. Clara smiled and said, "Pain has its own beauty. If you learn from it, you can turn it into art." Later that night, after everyone left, Daniel took her hand. "You did it, Clara." She looked at him, the lights reflecting softly on her face. "No," she whispered. "We did." He smiled. "So, what comes next?" She thought for a moment, then said, whatever we design together. For a long while, life finally moved like a gentle melody. Clara Evans had a rhythm again, mornings filled with sketches and warm coffee, evenings with laughter and soft music in Daniel's apartment. They weren't officially together yet, but everyone around them could see the connection. It wasn't just love growing between them. It was trust, something Clara thought she'd never feel again. One afternoon, Clara received an invitation to speak at a local business conference. The topic, designing after failure, turning pain into purpose.
She almost declined.
Standing on a stage, talking about her heartbreak and comeback. It terrified her, but Daniel encouraged her. You don't have to talk about what you lost, he said. Talk about what you found.
So she accepted.
The day of the event, Clara stood backstage, her heart pounding. Her fingers trembled as she held the microphone. When her name was called, she walked onto the stage, the lights blinding but warm. She began softly. 2 years ago, I thought my life was over. The person I trusted the most left me, and I lost everything I thought I needed. But I learned that sometimes the universe breaks you to rebuild you into someone stronger. As she spoke, the audience grew silent. Some nodded, others wiped tears. Clara smiled gently. I learned to design not just spaces, but emotions, homes that feel like healing, colors that feel like forgiveness. When the applause came, it felt like redemption. After the event, as she packed her things, a familiar voice came from behind. You were amazing, Clara. It was Ethan. Her breath caught for a moment. He was standing near the exit, wearing the same confident smile she once loved, only now it looked hollow. She steadied her voice.
Ethan.
What are you doing here? I saw your name on the speaker's list, he said, shrugging. I had to see you. I wanted to tell you, I'm proud of you. She didn't respond immediately. The air between them was thick with everything unsaid, betrayal, regret, time. He stepped closer. I've changed, Clara. I've been through a lot too. I lost my company, my friends. I realized what I had with you was real. Clara looked at him, not with anger, but compassion. Maybe you did, but what we had ended the moment you stopped believing in me. Ethan exhaled sharply. You think this Daniel guy really knows you the way I did? You're just running from what we were. No, she said quietly. I'm walking toward what I deserve. Ethan frowned, realizing she was no longer the woman who needed his approval. He forced a smile. You'll come back. You always do. Not this time. She turned and walked away, each step lighter than the last. That night, Daniel came to pick her up. She told him everything, every word Ethan said. He listened silently, his hand finding hers. You don't owe him closure, Daniel said gently. You already gave it to yourself. Clara leaned against his shoulder. For the first time, I didn't feel weak. I didn't feel broken. That's because you're not, he said. You never were.
Days passed.
Ethan began sending her messages, apologies, confessions, even late-night calls. She ignored them all. But one morning, she found a letter at her office desk. It was from him. It read, Clara, I know you won't reply, but I need to say this. Losing you was my punishment. I don't want forgiveness. I just hope you never forget that you were my greatest love, even if I didn't deserve you. Clara folded the letter carefully, placed it in her drawer, and never opened it again. That evening, Daniel took her out for dinner. The restaurant was small and beautiful, filled with candles and soft music. Halfway through the meal, he looked at her with a smile that melted her heart. Clara, I know we both came from places that hurt, but I want to build something real with you.
No ghosts. No fairs.
Just us. Tears welled in her eyes. She took his hand. You already have. He leaned closer, whispering, Then let's stop pretending. Their first kiss was gentle, not desperate, not rushed, but the kind that said, "You're safe now." Outside, the night breeze carried laughter and music. For Clara, it carried something more, the sound of peace finally returning. That night, as she lay beside Daniel, she realized something she never thought she would. She had forgiven Ethan. Not for him, but for herself. Forgiveness was her final act of freedom. 6 months had passed since Clara Evans walked away from her past for the last time. Her design firm, Aurora Concepts, had become one of the most promising new studios in the city. But more importantly, it had become hers. Every inch of that office reflected her story: sunlight, greenery, open spaces, and walls that held whispers of healing. Daniel worked alongside her now, officially her partner, in work and in life. Their desks faced each other, separated only by sketches and cups of coffee that never seemed to empty. One morning, Clara received a call that would change everything. A representative from the city council said, "Miss Evans, we've reviewed your proposal for the Haven project. We're thrilled to inform you it's been approved." Her hand froze midair. "The community housing proposal?" she asked in disbelief.
Yes.
"The entire project is yours." The Haven project, her dream since architecture school. A housing initiative for single mothers and survivors of emotional abuse. Safe, affordable, dignified homes built with beauty and warmth. When she hung up, she looked at Daniel with teary eyes. They approved it. He didn't need to ask what. He just smiled, stood up, and wrapped her in his arms. "You did it, Clara." "No," she whispered. "We did it." Weeks turned into months of planning. Clara poured her heart into every blueprint. She chose soft colors, earthy tones, and pastel blues to bring calmness. Every apartment had big windows and open terraces to invite light, to remind residents they weren't trapped anymore. During one meeting, a city official asked, "Why invest so much in design for low-income housing?" Clara replied calmly, "Because healing starts where people live. Beauty shouldn't be a luxury. It should be a right." Her words made it into the local paper the next day. Architect Clara Evans redefines home with compassionate design. The praise was humbling, but Clara didn't build for fame. She built for freedom. As the project grew, so did her bond with Daniel. They spent long nights working, laughing, and sometimes just sitting in silence, sketching side by side. One night, Daniel found her asleep at her drafting table, a pencil still in hand. He covered her with his jacket and whispered, "You're going to change lives, Clara." She stirred and smiled sleepily. "Only if you're by my side when I do." The Haven project broke ground on a golden morning in spring. The mayor gave a speech, journalists filled the front rows, and Clara stood at the podium in a white dress, the wind lifting her hair. She looked at the crowd, single mothers, children, survivors, dreamers, all waiting for hope to take shape in brick and glass. She began softly, "This isn't just architecture. It's a promise that no matter what you've been through, there's always a way to rebuild." The applause that followed was overwhelming. Daniel reached for her hand, their fingers locking like the foundations they were about to lay. Months later, the first building stood tall, warm lights glowing through its windows, laughter echoing in the courtyard. Clara walked through the halls with tears in her eyes. A woman approached her, one of the new residents, holding her daughter's hand. "Miss Evans," she said softly, "I just wanted to say thank you. My little girl hasn't stopped smiling since we moved in. She says this place feels like love." Clara crouched down to the girl's level. "That's exactly what it's made of." As they walked away, Daniel placed an arm around her shoulders. "That," he said, "is your masterpiece." "No," Clara whispered, watching the little girl run ahead. "They are." That evening, Clara stood on the rooftop of the Haven project, the same way she once stood years ago on a different rooftop, broken, uncertain, afraid. But now she was whole. Daniel joined her with 2 glasses of wine. "You've done it, Clara Evans. You built something the world will remember." She smiled, leaning into him. "The world doesn't need to remember me, Daniel. Just what love can build." He looked at her with quiet admiration. "That's why I love you." Clara turned to face him fully. "Say that again." "I love you," he said, steady and sure. She laughed through her tears. "I waited so long to hear those words again, but this time, from someone who means them." And then, beneath the sunset, Daniel kissed her, not as the man who rescued her, but as the man who believed in her. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was better. It was real. 2 years later, the Haven Project had expanded to 5 cities. Architects, students, and community leaders across the country were now studying Clara Evans's model, design that healed, homes that uplifted. Aurora Concepts had grown too. It wasn't a massive firm, but it was meaningful. Every person there believed in her vision. Architecture with heart. That morning, Clara stood by her office window, sunlight spilling across her desk. On the wall hung framed photos, the first Haven residence, the ribbon-cutting ceremony, and a photo of her and Daniel standing in front of their very first building together. Below that was a smaller frame, one that held a note she'd written to herself 2 years ago. "You will rise, not because someone saves you, but because you finally decide you deserve to." As she read it, a knock came at the door. Daniel walked in, smiling that same steady smile that had once anchored her in chaos. "Morning, Mrs. Evans," he teased. She grinned. "You love saying that, don't you?" "Every single time," he said, slipping his arms around her waist. "You ready for today?" Today was special, the grand opening of the Evans Design Institute, a training program offering scholarships for young women in architecture. It was her way of giving back, of ensuring others never felt as small as she once did. "I can't believe it's finally happening," she said softly. "You made it happen," Daniel corrected. "You turned your pain into a blueprint for hope." The event took place in a bright glass building, full of light and laughter. Former residents of the Haven Project came with flowers and stories. Reporters gathered, and Clara's parents, once distant and doubtful, sat proudly in the front row. When it was time, Clara took the stage. Her voice carried calm confidence. "People often ask me what inspired me to build," she began. "And for a long time, I said it was love or ambition. But the truth is, it was loss. When life takes everything from you, it also hands you a blank page. What you choose to draw next, that's what defines you." The crowd listened in silence, some smiling, some crying softly. "I built the Haven Project for people who thought they'd never start again. I built the Evans Institute for the next generation of dreamers, especially young women who've been told their dreams are too big or their hearts too soft. You can be both strong and gentle. You can design the world and still believe in love." Applause filled the hall. Daniel watched her, his eyes shining with pride. Later that evening, when the crowd had gone, Clara found herself on the rooftop terrace of the Institute, overlooking the city lights. The skyline shimmered with buildings she designed, silent monuments to resilience. Daniel joined her, handing her a small velvet box. "What's this?" she asked, smiling. "Open it." Inside was a gold pendant shaped like a small key. Engraved on it were the words, "For the woman who unlocked her own destiny." Her eyes glistened. "Daniel, it's beautiful." "It's true," he said softly. "You didn't just build buildings, Clara. You built a life, one where you're free, loved, and unbreakable." She looked out at the skyline again. "You know what's funny? For years I thought success would make me feel complete. But it wasn't that. It was this. The peace. The love. The knowing that even if everything vanished again, I'd still have myself. Daniel smiled. That's the strongest foundation there is. He took her hand and placed it over his heart. We've come a long way from where we started, haven't we? She laughed. From heartbreak to blueprints. To home, he said. They stood there for a long moment, the wind gentle, the city humming below them. Somewhere, in one of those glowing buildings, a mother was reading her child a bedtime story in the safety of their new home, a home Clara had built. And that, she realized, was her legacy. Not revenge, not fame, but healing that multiplied. She turned to Daniel, eyes soft with love. Let's go home. He nodded, pulling her close. Home is wherever you are. That night, as she lay in bed beside him, Clara whispered into the quiet, "Thank you, universe, for breaking me just enough to rebuild me right." And outside, the city lights blinked like stars fallen to earth, proof that even after the darkest nights, some souls don't just survive. They rise, they rebuild, and they shine. Later that evening, when the crowd had gone, Clara found herself on the rooftop terrace of the Institute, overlooking the city lights. The skyline shimmered with buildings she designed, silent monuments to resilience. Daniel joined her, handing her a small velvet box. "What's this?" she asked, smiling. "Open it." Inside was a gold pendant shaped like a small key. Engraved on it were the words, "For the woman who unlocked her own destiny." Her eyes glistened. "Daniel, it's beautiful." "It's true," he said softly. "You didn't just build buildings, Clara. You built a life, one where you're free, loved, and unbreakable." She looked out at the skyline again. "You know what's funny? For years I thought success would make me feel complete. But it wasn't that. It was this. The peace. The love. The knowing that even if everything vanished again, I'd still have myself." Daniel smiled. That's the strongest foundation there is. He took her hand and placed it over his heart. We've come a long way from where we started, haven't we? She laughed. From heartbreak to blueprints. To home, he said. They stood there for a long moment, the wind gentle, the city humming below them. Somewhere, in one of those glowing buildings, a mother was reading her child a bedtime story in the safety of their new home, a home Clara had built. And that, she realized, was her legacy. Not revenge, not fame, but healing that multiplied. She turned to Daniel, eyes soft with love. "Let's go home." He nodded, pulling her close. Home is wherever you are. That night, as she lay in bed beside him, Clara whispered into the quiet, "Thank you, universe, for breaking me just enough to rebuild me right." And outside, the city lights blinked like stars fallen to earth, proof that even after the darkest nights, some souls don't just survive. They rise, they rebuild, and they shine.